much was learning involved with everything you're doing here?
I read over 500 books in the 5 years that I was down, right? I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible, front to back three
I love
times,
that. Love that
and
so much.
it was just having an opportunity that I never really had that time, or never created that time, is a better way to put it, right? Prior to being incarcerated, and it was huge. It really got me to the point where I learned who I was. I learned what I cared about. I learned, that, I think one of the critical pieces that most people need to have is kind of just be curious, right? Like in the things that you're interested in, whether it's curious to take your business from, point B to point C, or 0 to 1, or, whatever the case may be. I think curiosity is the key.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Seth Sundberg here today with us on the call, telling us a little bit about his amazing empire in real estate and how to build wealth through that. Seth, super glad you're on the call here with us. Starting off with just the question here that I start everybody off, and then we can dive into your story a little bit more. What does high performance mean to you?
It's a great question, man, and thanks for having me on. Honored to be here for sure. Looking forward to the conversation. Absolutely. So I played professional basketball for 7 years, and there's a lot of peak performance, processes and things like that I've learned there that are applicable to really kind of everyday life, and specifically entrepreneurship for sure. There's two parts of things that high performers really do in the sports world that translates, over into entrepreneurship, and one of them is clearly identifying the goal, including breaking that down into chunks, and then doing your best every day towards that. Your best, not everybody else's best, your best, right? And I think those things, as we do those, like that becomes, performance just becomes a benefit of doing those things, right? There's some days that, I wake up and I'm like, yeah, let's get after it today. We're gonna do A, B, C. We got big stuff happening, da da da. And other days, and I'm just like, oh man, it's just been a grind. And I'm like, well, am I doing my best? Right, and that's really, I think, the key to to high performance, and it's just doing those things over time, right? That everybody, especially with social media and stuff now, wants the immediate gratification things, and sometimes that's there, but the vast majority of my experiences is just doing the right things consistently over time that lead to high performance for sure.
So true. Tell us what you do for clients. Help us understand what your success is and how you got to that level.
Yeah, sure. So I, again, played professional basketball for years. When I retired from that, I didn't know what I was going to do, and kind of just fell into real estate because I had made some money and I spent a lot of money. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to lose my income, I better figure out a way to kind of protect the money that I have from myself, basically. And figured I'd buy a couple houses. Didn't know anything about the process. It was the early 2000s. So I did, and I really fell in love with the kind of debt financing, structuring side of that. Ran a branch of a national mortgage company, so had 17 LOs working for me at the time. Had an investment firm that we were doing, residential acquisitions. And fast forward, there's some stuff that I'm sure we'll get into in the middle of that, absolutely. But fast forward to today, I specifically work on multifamily acquisitions. So typically we're doing 50 to 250 unit acquisitions, and we do repositionings, value add projects. We syndicate all of our projects. And so that's what I'm helping a lot of people kind of get into, either if they've been in real estate before, they've been in residential, and they're looking to bridge the gap into the multifamily space. How to do that. And there's a lot of things mentally and process wise that are just different from residential to multifamily that I've gone through and had to learn. And so I'm helping other people. And sometimes people just want to go directly into the multifamily space, which is I think the best way to be into real estate. And if you're not doing it for your primary residence and things like that. And then I do consulting for other companies, operationally primarily, and just going against. It's where's your financing, where's your debt stack, what's your tech stack look like, all these things to really kind of understand, how to maximize profitability at different levels, some early stage, some later stage, some big companies as well too. So
amazing. That's cool, man.
Yeah,
But
it's fun.
you're a go-getter for sure. Help us understand where that drive started from. Like, tell us about the beginning stages of you playing NBA. Like, that was an upbringing. Like, as a kid, you're always obsessed of being an NBA like superstar. Like, how did
Yeah.
you end up getting that? And where was the beginning of that drive? It was your parents that way? Were you just wired different? Like, help us bring us back to that moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a good question. I appreciate the compliment too. And it's funny because my parents split up when I was really young. Long story short, I moved with my dad when I was about 12, and I lived with my mom prior to that. And my mom's side of the family wasn't really sports, you know, focused, right? It was more education, more academics, more be a good person, yada yada. And my dad's side too, but my dad's side, when I lived with him, it was my dad got drafted by the Cowboys years and years ago in the NFL, and my uncle played for the Angels for a while, and things like that on my dad's side. So it was much more of that type of environment. And I'm 7 feet tall. I don't know if that comes across in the camera or not, but that helps. I've been 7 feet since I was 16 years old. So when I moved my dad, it was like being in a different environment. Really, it was like, hey, play some sports, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of an environmental push, and I was terrible,
Mm.
right? I was terrible my first 2 years of playing basketball. From 12 to 14, I was terrible, but it was like interesting enough, and I liked it, and I liked the competition and the challenge. And then, I started growing, I started coming into my own body, started understanding the game better, and then I just kind of fell in love with it. Then
Yeah.
once that happened, it was really kind of off to the races, and then the workouts are fun and just part of the process versus kind of the grinds. And that, so a lot of it is, people ask, I've heard that question asked before. And environment plays such an important role in everything that we do, right? And whether we recognize it consciously or subconsciously, there's an impact there for sure.
Mm.
And parents, structures, teachers, coaches, we were talking about locations earlier, right? Before
Yeah.
we started the podcast, and how much those environments impact us, right? And play a role in what we do. And so that was a big part of my my desire to really kind of get into basketball and just play, and be encouraged in it, and go through the challenges that you go through to get to a high level.
Hmm. Well, tell us about that mindset you had to have. Like, sports is one thing, but like
Yeah,
you had to like dive deep into the obsessive parts of roots of forcing yourself into those disciplines. I mean, you had your coaches, but I'm sure there was deeper down like discipline of you waking up or not doing parties, or maybe you did. Like, what was your routine, your
yeah,
mindset around that thinking of like going from casually being in high school to like maybe college ball to the NBA? Like, how did you transition? What was your mind
yeah,
like there?
yeah. Once I got the basketball bug, it was pretty deeply ingrained, right? And I just love playing. Like, it
Yeah.
was, I was telling somebody the other day, I forgot all about this. I used to wear basketball shorts underneath my jeans every single day, to school, to wherever, because you never knew when a game was going to come off,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
just start. Now it didn't matter if it was in season, out of season. I just love playing, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's the most important piece, is like, love what you're doing, and you don't have to like it every day, right? There's tons of practices and tons of days I was just like, like, but you just get through it, right? But if
Yeah.
you love it, you care about it, you enjoy it. I think that's the most important thing. I'll never forget. My dad asked me. So I played for the Lakers for a little while in '97 and 2000, and then in between I played overseas. So I played more of my career overseas in different countries. And one year I was in China, and we were going through a tough spell and some games and things like that. My dad said, "Hey man, you still having fun? Do you still love it?"
Mm.
And I go, it's a great question, and
Yeah.
it brought everything back to going, you know what? Yeah, I do. I still love it. I still enjoy it. It's fun, traveling and doing all this stuff. And so I think that's the kind of the key to, a lot of things that we do, right? And, I have a lot of things going on now in the business world, and you know, we've met through Dan Martell, right, and his coaching, and it's been amazing. And one of the things that I came to Dan with was really kind of getting clarity on all the things that I actually care about and systematizing them better, because while I'm pulled in a lot of different directions, I'm pulled. Like I like these things, all these things that I'm in, and working with different companies and different industries and things, and whether it's the real estate, whether it's sustainable renewable energy, whether it's I have a supplement company, I do some tech consulting, et cetera, too, right? So it's all these things kind of pull me in that direction, and I think that's what you want, right? You want to be involved. You want to have a problem of going, I like all these things, right? All these things are pulling me into them, and my problem is I got to, compartmentalize it properly, right? So I think once people find what that is, that, that's where the magic is, really.
How did you dip your toes in while you were an athlete into real estate?
Yeah, I didn't while I was playing.
Okay.
Right. It was kind of forced, it wasn't forced. It was dumb luck more than anything. Right. So, like I said, when I was playing, made some money, spent a lot of money. And then I knew my career was coming to an end, and my window into the, long NBA career was coming to an end. And so I said, all right, well, I gotta figure something out. So I'm going to park some of this money in real estate, and just, kind of figure it out and see what happens, see what I want to do with my life. And I realized I like the actual real estate space. And so, the debt and the equity and structuring side. And, and really that was kind of the beginning of it. I ended up getting a really good real estate agent and a not so great loan officer, right? She didn't explain things to me, and I didn't really understand what was going on. And there was, a lot of moving pieces to it. So I said, oh, I can do that. I think I can do that in a different way. And then, ended up, a couple years later, having my own mortgage company, and we did really well. It was really a great time to be in the market, more than me being very smart, which took a little while to learn. I was one thing that talking about some of the past stuff is like I was a pretty arrogant guy. I was playing professional basketball. I was really a lot of it looking back now. Now that I'm older, I can look back and go, it was pretty inauthentic. I was acting out ways that I thought people thought a professional basketball player should act. Whether that's and whether it's fine, if that's who you are, that's fine. But there was a lot of stuff even back then I kind of knew was inauthentic and not me, and not stuff that I cared about, but I was just doing a lot of it because that was what I thought people wanted me, to be. And, so I learned a lot through that process to really get there. But yeah, I think, anyways, that's a lot of it.
With diving into this, like what was, how many years did you play basketball? Let me ask that.
So I played 7 pro, and, so I played 16, 17 years total.
So that's probably a huge part of like your identity, of like your life, going from 20s and then 30s, and then you got into real estate, kind of just like parking it by accident, but then that kind of blew up with some amazing things you were able to do.
Yeah.
And then
it was great.
Bring us around of like today, like what did this all kind of spin to, with understanding the directions, what were like the principles or habits or things you had to learn, like bring us to, around some of the story of understanding.
Yeah. So the whole timeline, which is the ups and downs of life part, is, so I went through played professional basketball, got into real estate, did really well with that. Again, had the investment company, the mortgage company, and I mentioned I was a pretty arrogant guy already, right? So, it kind of fueling that fire. It felt like everything I touched, just kind of turned to gold, and it just boosted my arrogance. And in that space of arrogance, in 2009, I figured I'd take on the IRS. And so I did, and I lost, and I ended up spending 5 years in federal prison for tax fraud, in that period of arrogance, right? So thinking, okay, I'm gonna take these guys on, and they're nothing, yada yada yada. And in that was actually, it was one of the worst things that's ever happened to me and my family and things like that. It was also the thing that I needed. It ended up being one of the best things that could have happened to me. It's just as a human level, right? And having to just be faced with a lot of tough challenges, go through a system that I had never gone through before, that is intentionally set up to really kind of just, take the humanity out of life, and you end up becoming just a number. Even though I'm 7 feet tall, I'm just a tall number, walking around. And I learned a lot about it in that. And in that space, I learned who I was, what I really cared about, what I didn't. Was humbled, tremendously. I lost everything in the process, right? So I got out in 2014. So everything that I've had to build up again has been since that point, and learning, kind of learning how to, reacclimate into the world again was a process as well. So,
Yeah.
that's part of the dynamics though that I think make life beautiful. There was a TEDx talk that I refer to a lot, and I gotta remember who did it, but basically the guy was talking about the high highs and the low lows, and this just kind of wave of ups and downs that we all experience. And he's like, the broader that those waves are, the higher the highs and the lower the lows. Like that's where happiness in life really is, right?
Totally, I can see that.
If we're just in these kind of sound waves that aren't going up and down much, there's not a lot happening in there, right? So obviously we all want all highs, right? But there's a quote that says if the sun shined all the time, it'd be the desert.
Right.
Right. So, it's like the lows help, exemplify and kind of shine a light on the highs too. And so, it's a process. One of the pieces that the story that's kind of applicable to the entrepreneurship side here too, that you can be an entrepreneur anywhere. Is I actually, when I was incarcerated, I worked in the prison kitchen, and I was going to the back freezer to pull out a box of chicken one day to serve for lunch. And I pull this box out of the freezer, and on it I read in big bold black letters, it says "not for human consumption."
What?
So that's what I said. I said, all right, that I made a stupid choice to get myself here, and so did everybody else. But I'm still human. Like this is not for me. So I said, I'm never eating the chicken again. And I started going, I need to supplement, days that we have chicken and, with calories, and I want to get something as healthy as possible. So partner of mine inside and I started experimenting with different products off the commissary, and we started making protein bars inside. And ultimately, initially it was just for us, and then ultimately we started selling to other incarcerated adults, and had a sales team in different units and a production team at other sides, and we had to run collections and do all this stuff. And when I got out, it's actually the first company that I started back out again, because I wanted to really raise awareness around mass incarceration and just kind of get back into the world. And we called it prison bars at the time, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't know anything about running a food company in the world, which you have to do a lot of volume, sell a lot of millions of protein bars. To do it right, but it got the message out, was really kind of a catalyst to really, like I said, telling a story and having smart people be focused on the problem of incarceration and mass incarceration, and specifically employment for people with criminal histories, because it's such a critical piece to the puzzle to prevent recidivism, for people going back in. So anyways, that's one of the things that there's people in all kinds of situations and everywhere, and if you have an idea, there's a way to get your
entrepreneurs through and through. Even in the behind bars, you're figuring out some cool ways to do it. But you're also helping a lot of people too. Like you're getting iPads in there. Like you're getting, like, tell us a little bit about like your cause there, because you've been in that, and so you kind of know behind what's happening there and how you're supporting and making an impact.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my goal, my kind of 25-year vision, is to make recidivism a choice. Right now, there's so many blockers, there's so many challenges to employment, housing, that it makes it really, really difficult for reentry to happen in a way, and for someone to come out and just thrive, right? So one of the companies that I do some work with is called Viapath. They're the largest facilitators of tablets in the state prison system in the nation. And really, the premise of my work there is that reentry kind of begins day one of incarceration, right? 95% of the people that are being released from prison will get out, one day. And not having a set structure plan, for reentry and what that's going to look like, and preparing them, day one is a disservice to society, to them as individuals. And, so I'm really like the work that we're doing there. There's a lot of room for improvement. The technology in the world is, I used to say 3 to 5 years ahead of some of the technology that's behind the wall, but it may be closer to 7 or 8 years behind, but we're working to kind of bring that up. Although I had a really interesting conversation with a guy yesterday, actually, that has full laptop, is working for a couple tech companies inside. So there's a lot of changes,
Yeah.
that are happening. He had a back screen up, and I'm like, I know you're in a cell right now, but it's like it doesn't even feel like it. We're just talking like this. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Okay,
So,
that's cool.
Yeah,
They're helping
yeah,
people that way.
yeah.
And then tell us, bringing it up to this point right now, after doing so many different companies, you're helping some clients with all sorts of things, with wealth and real estate. Like, how does that all blend together with someone that's a here with understanding some principles of things that you teach and what you
Yeah.
help people with?
Yeah, for sure. So we do a multifamily accelerator now, where we have weekly coaching calls, and helping people work through how to find deals, how to get deals, how to raise capital, how to put the deals together, how to underwrite. And by the way, if there's anybody that is interested in learning how to underwrite multifamily projects, you can feel free to follow me on Instagram at Seth Sundberg, and just DM me underwrite, and I'll get you guys the a 30-minute training on how to underwrite and templates and whatever, everything you need for free. So I'm happy to do that, for your audience for sure. And yeah, so it's the multifamily space is great. There's that is a long-term wealth product. I mean, real estate for generations has been one of the things that we use to build wealth in America, right? And a lot of times it's just education that's the difference between, you've been in it yourself, right? So that, it's like you learn, you grow, you figure it out. And the faster you can, like anything, the faster you can avoid the potholes and maximize the benefits, right? The better it is. And, it's much better to do that from people that have gone through it before, and I have. And, I'm trying to share everything that I know, through that platform with folks too. So, and, my goal, like I said, from just kind of an alignment standpoint, is to have the reentry path include real estate for men and women that are
Very
being
cool.
released. Also, right? There's such a gap there, and it's difficult and things like that. But it's there's no reason for people that have gone through any situation of reentry, whether it's coming back from the military or war, or incarceration, or getting out of a bad relationship where someone else was a breadwinner and you don't know how to do it. Like, those are all re-entering back into new processes, right? So I think having the plans and the pathways built out more and more, in each
Yeah.
of those steps is critical.
How much was learning involved with everything you're doing here? And how did you like buy back your time with some of that focus you're doing now?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we talk about prison a bit too, but it was I read over 500 books in the 5 years that I was down. Right. I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible, front to back 3
Love
times,
that. Love that
and
so much.
it was just having an opportunity that I never really had that time, or never created that time, is a better way to put it, right? Prior to being incarcerated, and it was huge. It really got me to the point where I learned who I was. I learned what I cared about. I learned, that, I think one of the critical pieces that most people need to have is kind of just be curious, right? Like, in the things that you're interested in, whether it's curious to take your business from, point B to point C, or 0 to 1, or, whatever the case may be. I think curiosity is the key to, opening a lot of elements that will make business successful. And having the right people around you, right? I mean, talking about buy back your time, and Dan's process there has been pretty amazing, and just knowing that he's been through that, and he's got experience in that, and bringing him in, to our worlds has it helps change and restructure things, to a way that we can do bigger and better stuff for ourselves, and we don't have to learn it, right? Like, learning is critical, right, to life. But we don't have to learn everything. We can, from zero, at least we can, learn from people that have gone through it, and it's a critical piece of the puzzle to growth for sure.
What do you feel like there are the habits of your success that you've been able to do? What have been things that you had to install or adapt, or things that you've really kind of had to work on to really kind of create the success that you have now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think similar to basketball, right? It's what's the next step, right? Like in basketball, we have this phrase called a short memory, right? Nobody. There's never been a perfect athlete out there. Period. Basketball, baseball. Jordan is amazing. He's not perfect, right? He'll tell you himself, right?
Right.
The thing that you get better at over time is having a short memory and going, great, made a mistake. What's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't even know what the end of the game is. I don't need to know. I just need to know what's my next step. My next step is if I screwed up on offense, I need to get my butt back on defense. That's my next step. Clearly identify what your next step is, focus on that and get there. Then when you're there, identify what the next step is, right? And you just try and keep those as the highest reward and lowest risk, next steps possible. And I think that, there's no sexy silver bullet or anything in this, right? It's like just what's the next step, right? And identifying that and spending some time to do that, and then just go do it. Just go do the next step. You don't have to know what the end of the book looks like, right? I think that's where, I've seen clients that get stuck in that, and they're like, oh, but is that going to lead to this? And it's like, maybe, we don't know yet, but it's the clear next step. Right, so that's what you should do. Now, should you choose to do it or not? Right, that's the internal, battle and dialogue that we all have each day. But identify the next step and go do it. I think just constant over and over, and repeat that and rinse, wash, and repeat.
Mm-hmm. How do you make decisions? I know sometimes people really sit and contemplate a lot about pros and cons lists before making decisions, and I know many entrepreneurs, there are some decisions you have to make really fast and then some that you should sit on. How do you go through your decision-making process of evaluating a property or businesses to start or people to help or not to help? Help us bring us to that.
Yeah, no, the decision-making process is a fun one for sure. One of the things that I always know is that a decision is better, even if you're not making a decision, that ends up being a decision, right? It's a decision to procrastinate. It's a decision to not choose. It's a decision to whatever it is, and those aren't decisions that that I want to be making. So it's much better just to make decisions, get it going. Identify as much as you can with the information that you have at hand, and you'll never have a perfect data set, right? It just doesn't exist, and so just take the information. If you get new information later, make a different decision, right? Own it, come back to it and reposition. I think it was Abraham Lincoln, that said, he was being faced with some two tough decisions, and he just kind of immediately said, yep, let's do this. And after the team left the room, I guess his general said, how do you know that that's the right decision? He goes, I don't, but standing here and talking about it is not going to get anything done. So, let's just make a decision and go for it, right? And that's I think propelling, falling forward is a big part of athletics. It's a big part of entrepreneurship. It's a big part of just growth, as our time on this earth, happens to us, right? So.
In terms of your faith and trying to figure out your more significance and fulfillment and the upper calling that we have as believers, how do you kind of follow through with picking and choosing those things? Because that's not always easy, because you have more of a clarity of this is the North Star of we need to be helping people know about Jesus and follow. How do you kind of bridge the gap between what you do today and then also for the kingdom?
Yeah, I try and do everything that I do for the kingdom. It's tough. Ego comes into play. Things like that are always present in our flesh for sure. But I think it's just connecting. One of the most humbling things to me is just being able to connect to the source. Call it God, call it universe, call it energy. Whatever. There's a ton of names, right, to describe the same thing. And us as flesh and blood human beings being able to just kind of tap into that and, connect to the source, hear from the source. Like, to me, it's just always amazing, right? So, it's just humbling going, wow, this is the thing that created everything, right? And is in everything and is here. And it's just being able to connect, with that is really, it really just makes me feel, I'm a tall guy, but I feel real small when I do that, for sure. So, I think staying in constant, as much as possible alignment with that is really kind of moving that kingdom process forward.
I remember hearing a quote from St. Augustine. He said, love God and do whatever you want, right? Because if you can do that correctly, you're not going to make like the stupid decisions that are going to be causing misalignment with that. And I try to think of that quite a bit when I'm trying to make hard decisions, going back and tying into that. Is there's going to be hard decisions, but making a decision is better than indecision, right? For sure, like you had said. And then trying to figure out what is the best alignment with the future and with that. More often than not, there's some of the big decisions we have to make in short term, like where do I move or what house to buy? Like, and you're trying to like say, okay, what were some of the practical things? And I remember trying to really kind of sort through this, and I do this quite a bit of just trying to figure out and gamifying life as much as I can. It kind of goes back to like buying back your time. It's like, well, if my church is over here or my office is over here, how far is the gym? Like, how far is the airport? So if you're going to be doing speaking engagement or this, that, and the other, you're trying to align your future of like when, where, how. And I think most of the time people just go off of like shooting from the hip. And so I love that you're really kind of being really intentional about that, because I think that's the most important about the alignment of trying to plan a life, not to have kingdom here on earth, but designed in such a way that you can be the most efficient, impactful person as possible. And I love that about your vision of creating wealth. And there was going to the side note of this too, and I love that your heart behind it. But I remember I was a pastor for years, and then I got into doing entrepreneurship. But I remember that big shift, because I remember John Wesley, an old Puritan, evangelist way back when. He said, "Earn as much money as you can, give as much money as you can, and save as much money as you can." Right? And I think there's some parts of that kind of shifts into the gear. And so, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and you're resonating with me and Seth's story and just understanding some of the background of stuff, it's like try to think about those key things that are really, really helpful. And I think that will play a huge part in those decisions and future things that are really, really aligned there. Quick question for you, Seth. This is kind of off the wall with things, but I try to ask this. Sometimes it's fun to know what people carry around with them. Like, what if you had your everyday carry of what you take in and out of your house? Is there certain fun things that you take with you all the time? Is there anything unique?
It's a great question.
Do you still wear your shorts under your pants?
No, I don't do that anymore. My knees don't like the sporadic game drop anywhere right now. Right. But I like reminders, and I don't tell this to a lot of people, but I have a couple. They're rocks, right, that I carry around, and they're symbols of reminders of different things that I'm focusing on, and I carry those around with me all the time and have them in my pocket now, and it's every time I just reach in my pocket and I'll jiggle them around, I go, oh, yeah, okay, you get kind of sidetracked, off focus or whatever, off kilter, and put your hand in your pocket, jiggle the rocks around, and they're a reminder of going, all right, let's get back on track and get back to it.
I love that.
Good question.
Everybody needs kind of like those reminders, but also just something that just brings them down to earth and reminds them of their humanity and frailness of it. That's awesome. Seth, how can the community here connect with you further? And I'll put all the links down below so that people can connect with you further, but how can people follow you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Instagram is the best way. Seth Sundberg, SethSundberg is the best way. And again, if anybody's interested in the underwriting side of the house, feel free to just DM me underwrite, and I'll get you some information over there, and you can start diving in on that. But yeah, that's the best way to connect, for sure.
Cool. I appreciate you being on the call here with us. And we'll wrap up the call till next time. Thanks for joining us on the show here, and we'll see you next time.